What I'd like to show in this next lesson are a couple of scripts that we can run from the command line. And the script isn't anything too terribly special. The most important thing you can see here on the Scala-cli website is that scripts are files that contain Scala code, but they just don't have a main method. And as we scroll down on this page, they show that there's no need for a build tool or additional configuration. You can just run it like this, scala-cli run the script. And if you're also familiar with using the shebang term here, this whole line here in the Unix world is considered a shebang line. So you can actually embed the scala-cli command as the first line of a script, and then it will run this here. So what you do is you make the script file executable. You do a change mode plus X on your file like that, and then you can just execute your file. And for the most part, what I'm going to do is just follow the example that I have here in the book. So the biggest thing I need to do is get that guy there. It will come back here and import it up there. And what else do we have? So what am I doing here? We're doing a print and read interaction from a command line script. So print, ask what's your name, then read it in, and then print the name. So we can do that guy there. And here we'll use print line. Instead of using print line, we use print, and then print does not put a new line character at the end, so that's perfect for what we're doing here. What's your name? Space right there. And then I want to read that in, so I can do a val name equals read line. And read line is what we imported up there, right up here. And then I can do a print line. And he said your name is $name. And I was wondering what was wrong with the color coding. I actually wasn't putting that code in this file. I was just putting it in a plain text file. So I just moved that over here. And now you can see that we have the syntax highlighting. And on their website, they show that you needed a run command here, but I don't see a run command in my book. So we will see if that is necessary. So let's do an L to see. There it is. So scala-cli, and just run that script. And that works just like that. And there isn't any error checking in here. So if I do that and then I just enter, you'll see that. So if you want to do some error handling, you do that right here after the name parameters. So you say if name dot trim equal that, then you'd say print line, sorry, I didn't get your name, else. And then to test this, we come over here and we can say scala-cli, do that. Don't give it a name. And then we get, sorry, I didn't get your name. And then I do give it a name here. And that works just fine. All of this is a Scala script. So you can see it doesn't have a main method. And it's just a series of code here. So you could add in whatever you needed to. So you can say val age equal 33. Val weight equals 200.00. So that one's a double. And then if I just get rid of all this and assume success, then we will prompt that. We'll do that. And one more thing here that would do that. Your age is $age, and your weight is $weight. And that should just show how those are used. Come back over here, run that guy again. What's your name? Al. And then we get that output there just as expected. And in all of this here, I just want to show this is all normal Scala code. The only thing that's really missing is the main method. And then in the very first line, as shown here, you can import whatever you need to import. And I'll show more of this in the second example. For the next scripting example, I want to show how to make an HTTP GET request. So this is chapter 81 in the book, Learn Scala 3 the Fast Way. Scroll down a little bit here, you will see that I'm going to use the Sttp client library, and this comes from a company named Software Mill. And I show how to make an HTTP GET request here. The interesting part here is these first two lines. So these are using directives right there and right there. And I believe the syntax is actually changing a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and go with this. But the important thing is that these two guys are actually configuration directives. So they look like comments, and then you follow them with that greater than symbol. And these have to be the first lines in the file. The first line here says, I want to use Scala-3. And the second line says, I want to use this library. And you need to know something about this library to be able to use it. So this is saying I want to be able to use this library right here, and I want to use the core component, and then I want to use version 3.7.2. After that, we import what we need, and then we scroll down here, and this is the code here. So what I've done is I switched over here, and I've already pasted this code in here, so I copied and pasted it. So this first line says I want to use Scala-3. This line says I want to use version 3.72 of the Sttp client library. Then what I do here, you have to import that library. So this is a way of telling the compiler, I want to use this library. And then once you have that library, I want to import this package or everything from this package so I can use it. And now everything here is code that comes from this library right here. So HTTP URL connection backend is a type that's in their library. And then in this next line, basic request also comes from their library. And then you call a get method on basic request. You pass in, this is another example of a string interpolator. So they have created their own, instead of just using a plain string right here, they have this string interpolator called URI. So you pass in the string, and this little guy here, it will let you pass in other things over here. And so you can pass in values and things like that over there. I believe that's why they use an interpolator instead of a plain string. And then send is another method on that guy. So we start with a basic request, we call get on it, it returns a result, and then we call send on whatever that is, and you're passing in the back end, which is created here, and then I print the response. So I'm calling this URL right here. I get a response from that URL, and then I print it. And now I name this file http:/get.sc. It could be .scala. If it was with .scala, it would have to have a main method. But because I'm showing scripts, I named it .sc, so it doesn't require a main method in here. Now we come over here, and we do a scala-cli, and I'm going to do the HTTP guy there, right there. Whoops. Okay, that does work down here in the bottom. It works, so that's the response we get from that URL. But this part is cool. It's saying that core is outdated. You want to update to 3.8.15. And then it gives you information about that right here. So it's saying update 3.7.2 to 3.8.15. So let's come over here. And 3.8.15. Save that, come back here, and run that guy again. And so you see it downloads what it needs very fast, actually. Compiles, and then it runs, and we get a same response right here. Now, if you're interested in how STTP works, I have a little more information here about the backends. And then I share several recipes in the Scala cookbook. And in the book, I also do a post request. I don't know that there's any reason to do a post request here. Let's take a look at this real quick. So I do the same two header configuration lines right there. Then I import what I need. And then this one I do with the main method. I think I did the previous one with the main method. And then I did my script just now without a main method. And then this code is actually very, very similar. So there's not any real good reason to do that. And the only real big difference here is that you're using a post method right there. And the previous one, if I go back to the code over here, I use a get method, and I probably didn't emphasize it enough earlier. So that's a get method call. This is a post method call. And then it passes in this URL with these parameters, or that parameter right there, the parameter and value. Then the only other thing I want to mention really is that on the scala-cli website, under the category of using directives, this has been changing a little bit, or they've been experimenting with some things. So what I just showed was, whoops, I showed this syntax. I see what they've done here. They're getting rid of the quotes. So let's go ahead and take a look at that right there. So I remember, I forgot all about this. I'm sorry. So that one, we'll get rid of that quote right there. Let's make sure that compiles. That compiles and runs. Sorry for disappearing for a little while there. I may not have the latest version of scala-cli installed. So what they're showing in the documentation is that now when you're using a library or a dependency, you should be using dep, and then they show a dependency without any quotes here. So then if I go back to my code, what I found is I can use using dep with double quotes like it's shown here. Save that and run that guy. That does work. But either way, I just wanted to show this as a script. And this one's kind of nice because it shows everything you really need to know. It shows these using directives. So I'm very clear, I want to use scala-cli. And then I'm saying I want to use this library called Sttp client, and the core version of that library. And you saw me update to the latest version. Next up, we use as many import statements as we need right here. So I could keep adding, if I needed to import more things, then I would just say import whatever else I need right there. And you would have as many imports as you need. And then everything after that is Scala code. So as I might have mentioned before, this is really, really nice improvement for scripting in Scala-cli. One last thing I want to show, since I mentioned this, is the shebang stuff here on this first line. So I just copied and pasted this from the Scala CLI website. So this has to be the very first line in the file, and then your using directives have to be the next thing after that. So I make sure I save that, and I can do a chmod plus x on, what was that called? HTTP something. There we go, HTTP get. So I change that, and that makes that file executable. So then if you look at that file, you can see right there. Hopefully you're familiar with Unix permissions. And if not, what that X means right there and there and there is that the file is executable. In the Unix world, this means that the file is readable by me, it's writable by me, and then it's executable by me. And then this is the part where I get really rusty, is I think that this means that it's readable by other people in my group. It's not writable by other people in my group, and then it's executable by other people in my group. And then this third set would be for rest people in the world outside of my group. But don't quote me on that. The only important part here we have to worry about is that it's executable by me. And by executable, I mean now I don't have to type in scala CLI ... whatever. I can just do /HTTP and run it. And that's really cool, right? Because that's an executable script now written with Scala-cli and using Scala CLI.